What's up, Thumpers? Welcome back to another episode of Cineverse right here on Hyper RPG. We are back to talk about some movies. We're gonna have a good old time doing it. Ain't that right?
Oh yeah, we got some movie. We got one thing of movie news. It's actually funny. Right before we were doing the show, Elizabeth reminded us. Right before we started, there was a degree where it's me and Adam were like looking through some movie news. Because obviously the guys talk about superhero news and Star Wars news, and that's a lot of the big stuff. So it's like we always try and find those little things. I was like, yeah, I don't think there's really anything. I mean, I was like, God, did anyone get announced? Is it working on something? Is anybody doing this? Is anybody doing that? And I couldn't think of anything. I was like, I guess we don't have any news. And then Elizabeth was like, oh, we got to talk about that Netflix thing. I completely forgot about it. So Elizabeth, tell us about the story. We can jump into it.
Oh, okay. So Netflix was banned from
competition.
Yeah.
At the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So their films can still be shown there. It still will be part of like some of the little more offshoot off-brand things, but it cannot be in competition, which means it can't win Best Director, the Palme d'Or, or anything like that.
And that's because it doesn't show in any theaters. Although there have been Netflix films that show in select theaters.
Yeah.
So that was, and Spielberg said something about this. Yeah. Spielberg did an interview where he said, once you just, and it's kind of interesting to see Spielberg kind of put his dick, for lack of a better term, put his dick on the table about this, where he's like, here's my thought. Because like he's usually a pretty agreeable guy for the most part. He's usually like,
so what was his take? Because I didn't hear it.
His take, he didn't mention the Cannes Film Festival, but it's Netflix movies. He goes, once you as a director, he goes, and there's great Netflix movies, and there's great stuff in Netflix, there's great stuff in television, and if you make a great Netflix movie, you should certainly be nominated for an Emmy. You should not be nominated for an Oscar. He goes, and what did he say? He basically said, like,
they're
once
made
you
for TV movies.
He said they're made for TV movies, and I think his exact wording was, once you start nominating those films for Oscars, you're creating tokenism for these films. And it was so fascinating for him to take such like a hard stance take on it.
I see 2 points of view with that. One is, yeah, if it's direct for Netflix, you are thinking about it in terms of a smaller screen. Although a lot of people like the screen here have much bigger screens that they watch it on than you would even like relatably see in a theater. But there are Netflix films that do have a short run, and yeah, that has been to qualify them for things for the most part. But sometimes it's been like switched, or like Annihilation, for example, theaters in America, Netflix international.
Yes, but that would still count as like a Paramount movie as opposed to like
a Netflix original.
A Netflix original, like Gerard's Game or something like that.
But
or Recent Donation.
Yeah,
there is. I mean, it does come off as like very elitist in a way to say that any film should be disqualified for that kind of because of the distributor.
Well, I think that's sort of the interesting thing is the Cannes Film Festival put out a statement and they basically said Cannes is kind of known for being sort of snobby, and those audiences are famous for booing and things of that nature. And they basically put out a statement that said, we're the arbiter of taste and this doesn't match our tastes. For the most part,
which is kind of silly because Netflix is not a brand. It's not.
Oh, I know. It's kind of interesting. I will say though, and we've talked about it on the show, where it's like a lot of the big movies Netflix pushes. Like obviously you do have like your Mudbounds and things like that, and we'll see what happens with Scorsese's new movie. But we talked about on this show is like the movies that Netflix really pushes have kind of been shit.
Yeah.
Well,
between Cloverfield,
it's kind of
Bright,
like things that nobody else wanted that they take.
Yeah,
Cloverfield,
I mean,
Bright.
But that even like goes to. It's not like a channel. It's not like it's not like Troma or something where all our films are like this. It's
it's not one particular flavor of movie. It's everything.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And they're not counting Amazon because Amazon, where I think the difference is like Beast of No Nation and Netflix movies, because Netflix is pretty staunch on and that was the other thing you Cannes said like they wanted to allow like Okja, and if you're hearing pounding, that's kaiju killing a rope. They allowed films like Okja and things like that into the festival because what Cannes basically said is like they wanted to show Netflix that you should be releasing these films in theaters like Amazon does. Manchester by the Sea comes out and it's in theaters for like 2-3 months. Netflix literally will only put it out for 2 weeks for Oscar qualifications and then take them out
straight onto their platform.
But Cannes is saying that that's not good enough.
Yes,
if it's Netflix,
and Spielberg and other people are like,
see,
that's horseshit.
That's stupid. I mean, because if it was put
take
in
that,
theaters,
Steven.
Even if it's, honestly,
no, I know.
I would love to see Martin Scorsese's response to that, since he has a picture that could only get picked up by Netflix.
Well, and I think he demanded in his contract that it play a little longer in theaters.
Yeah.
So I think his statement.
Yeah, but
I
now
do-
it still can't play at Cannes because it has the name Netflix attached to it,
It's true, and
or be qualified. It can play, it can't be.
Yeah, and I will say, people, Birth Movies Death wrote a great article about this where they kind of said, where they very frankly were like, "This is interesting," but I'd love to hear everyone's discussion here in the chat too, or in the comments, where they basically said like, "Does it really matter if the movie still plays in the theaters at Cannes, even if it's not qualified and can't win the Palme d'Or, but it still plays there?" It still is going to build buzz and all these other things. And the movie's going to come
We're
out
gonna
like,
watch it,
for lack of, it's the mom test I've often talked about. My mom's not going to give a shit that this movie's not playing at Cannes or not winning the Palme d'Or.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if she's like, if someone on the news who goes to the Cannes Film Festival is like, I saw this movie and it starred this guy and it was great and it's on Netflix and you can see it in 2 weeks, you know, people are going to be like, ooh, you know what I mean? So Cannes not completely banning them. They're just saying, we're not going to give you any awards.
Yeah. And then I heard another point made is that Cannes exists in a way for indie films to find a distributor, whereas a Netflix film has a distributor.
Yes.
So that point is non-existent. Although that doesn't really make sense for the competition.
That's what
category
Spielberg was kind of getting at, was that we have these huge movies that always have distribution because these studios want to make their Star Wars, their Marvel, their DC, all these properties that are from the past, but they're not giving these smaller movies an opportunity. These movies are now being forced to go to Amazon and Netflix and all this stuff. And he's worried that by doing that, we're not going to give smaller indie movies a chance in the theaters. And studios are not going to give them. He wants to see more studios take risks on some of these movies instead of those filmmakers just going to Netflix. But the industry's changing. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, and honestly, it's so impossible to be picked up by a studio these days.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Like,
if you're not a
more
Ninja
than-
Turtle
more than
or
it
whatever,
more than it ever was before.
Yeah.
in a way that's like, it's very sad. Like Steven Soderbergh, he retired from film because he was just like, he found it so hard to work in the studio system to try and make his little passion projects, and then obviously came back for Logan Lucky. He's now got a film in theater right now that I'd really like to go see called Unsane.
Yes.
That he made entirely on an iPhone
yeah.
with the lead from The Crown,
Clairvoyant,
and
yeah.
reviews are great for it right now. And I think that was put out by a distributor who I've never heard of, but they got it in theaters.
Yeah.
It's in theaters. I think it's from a distributor I've never heard of. It's going to be like Fox, and I'm like, I'm
No,
an idiot.
it is some. I'll look it up.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing more and more of that, and as we're seeing like Disney's buying Fox and all these other things, and all the studios are becoming one studio, and that's why it's like, I think, I hear so a little bit to talk a little bit about superhero stuff. Whenever I hear the discussion about like, oh, people shouldn't worry about Disney buying Fox because they'll see how good Logan did, and Logan got nominated for an Academy Award, so therefore they'll totally make R-rated movies. And I just don't, Disney, for lack of a better term, I don't think is in the market of making R-rated movies.
Yeah.
Because if everything you put out makes $1 billion at PG-13, why would you
bother?
put out an R-rated movie that's going to make $400 million?
Yeah, and then the other thing is like everyone talks about, and justifiably so, about how this is a second golden age of television.
Yes.
And how
Silver
there are so many directors who go to TV instead of movies because they have more freedom. Some of them get more budget.
Godless, the Western show that's on Netflix that had Jeff Daniels and all this other stuff. The guy, Scott Frank, I think was the writer and director on that. 6-7 episode series. He wrote it as a movie, and no studio wanted it.
Yeah.
And then he went to Netflix, and they said, if it's a show, we'll make it. And I have not watched Godless yet. But that seems like a good example of something that like had a big marketing push, and then I heard no one talk about when it came out. So 1 or 2 people I know watched it, said it was great, but it felt like it was something that like, and I think that's my only issue with Netflix sometimes, is even like their big shows like Stranger Things, it's like there's the push, it's out, and then they'll never push it again. Like Jessica Jones season 2 push show came out 2 weeks ago. I've seen nothing. There's no commercials, no internet ads, nothing like that. And that's sort of the sad thing about Netflix. My point being though is like, I watching Godless, and I haven't seen it yet, but I do wonder, like, if your initial idea was an 1.5-hour movie and you go to a company and they're like, we'll do it if you make it 8-hour-long episodes, is stuff going to feel stretched and pulled? And
I mean, sure, but how many people have always had to adapt their ideas for studios?
Sure.
In one form or another.
Sure. And Godless might be great. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, Netflix is a huge distributor, so I see why filmmakers are going to them if that's where they are accepted and can make their stuff. I mean, not everyone has the advantages of being Spielberg.
Yeah, no, it's very true. So it's very interesting. I feel like every couple of months now there's some new thing about Netflix that some person is saying some kind of stuff about.
Yeah. By the way, it was Bleecker Street and Soderbergh's production company Fingerprint releasing.
Ooh.
There it is.
What
Yeah,
do you think,
Kaiju agrees.
I think Kaiju just had like a nightmare because he was lying down. He was lying down and barked up at
He
the
woke up
ceiling.
Netflix.
Yeah. Kaiju, what do you think?
He likes their production company.
Yeah,
Kaiju, who should win the Palme d'Or? Kaiju!
Son of a bitch.
So that was the big movie news of the week. We'd love to hear your takes on this. To you, are Netflix movies legitimate movies, or do you agree with Spielberg? What do you think about the Cannes Film Festival? Does a film not being able to be nominated for any kind of awards matter to you? Definitely let us know. I'm very curious.
Yeah.
Moving on, we got a lot of movies to talk about today. We're going to be talking about Pacific Rim 2, which me and Adam saw. Elizabeth saw Death of Stalin and Game Night. And we're going to talk about required viewing, which was Killing of a Sacred Deer. And then Adam is going to let us know his pick.
Totally.
So it's going to be a big one. So why don't we do, because we're going to do a lot of jumping around back and forth. Elizabeth, pick one of yours.
What do you mean?
Either Game Night or Death of Stalin, because then we'll kind of go in a circle.
Okay. Let's see. So, Game Night. Game Night's been getting really good reviews.
So Game Night, for those who don't know, Jason Bateman movie from the guys who wrote and directed the Vacation remake.
Yeah.
They also wrote Horrible Bosses, the first one. I think they were producers on the second one. And one of the 2 of 7 writers on Spider-Man
And they're directing the upcoming Flash movie.
at the moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
So they produce it along with the lead Jason Bateman.
Right.
And who, I mean, obviously very much wanted this film to be made. And I'll say, like, it's an interesting film. Clue is brought up, comes to mind as a comparison because it kind of... So the film is basically a group of friends in Brooklyn, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, all have this game night, and then Jason Bateman's older brother that he's jealous of shows up, and everything goes crazy because he has this, like, fake kidnapping game, and then of course real kidnappers come in and take him, and then they find that out and then chase the kidnappers for most of the film. So it's a fun concept, and there's some funny moments in it. I will say that I thought the jokes that landed the hardest were definitely physical gags. And some of the lines don't hit. Some of the scenes felt a little flat to me. The guy who's the villain, the blonde guy who's in everything.
He played Landry on Friday Night Lights. He's in a bunch of things. Fargo at the moment.
Escaping me.
But people compare. Let's say he looks like a young Matt Damon sometimes.
Yeah. He was really on it, and I feel like his acting is what that movie needed, and he definitely walked away the star of the film.
Jesse Plemons?
Which it has.
Is it Jesse Plemons? Jesse Plemons, yeah.
Jesse Plemons.
I nailed it.
So he has this kind of acting style where he's it's a character. It's a grounded character, but it's like a big choices. And the other actors are kind of playing just themselves, but they kind of come off a little bit two-dimensionally, and because the film's so crazy, I'm not sure it hits as well as it could.
Right.
There's this whole, like, character arc that's supposed to happen for Rachel McAdams and Jason Bateman about them, like, having a baby as a couple that just kind of seems forced and out of nowhere, and you don't really care about them throughout the end, where it seems like some of those things could have been rewritten, but, like... and they have some cool devices, although I'm not really sure how it connects together. Like, they do tilt shift every time there's a transition, so it looks like models, which I think is supposed to be like their game pieces. But it's not really justified. It's just kind of there. And then they kind of have this 80s synth score, which is cool, but doesn't really make sense with the rest of the film, and nothing else has that tone in the whole film. So it's kind of an odd choice.
Out of place a little bit.
Yeah, and there's certain things in it like that where it's just like
it kind of feels
a
like
lot of interesting pieces.
Yeah, like a cavalcade of tastes that don't gel.
Yeah, it seems like there might have been a lot of hands in it. But yeah, there was some of it that was fun. Like, I thought it was okay.
Would you recommend it, or is it kind of like a rent it, wait and rent it?
I know some people really liked it. I would watch it online. I don't think you need to see it in the theater.
Yeah.
Although, like, you know, if you really want to see a comedy right now, it's...
If you have a movie pass, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was not big on some of the stuff. I did like the concept. I haven't seen it yet. But I wasn't big on Horrible Bosses or the Vacation remake.
Oh, that Vacation remake was horrible.
I will say these two writers and the directors on this one too have never really done it for me.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, no discredit to the guy, but I know one of them used to be the lead on Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah, John Francis Daly.
Yeah, John Francis Daly, and I kind of feel like, for lack of a better term, because he was on a show with Seth Rogen and Judd Apatow and all this other stuff, people consider him as good of a writer, and I don't think he is. I feel like everything is like, again, like generic studio comedy template.
Yeah.
He's great in Waiting.
Yeah, he's a very good actor. But you know, maybe they gotta find their stride. I don't know. Horrible Bosses never did it for me. Colin Farrell to me.
There's also, I guess it has almost the same plot as that Bill Murray movie. Where
The Man Who Knew Too Little.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, God, I didn't even think about that.
I've heard is a better film, so now I kind of want to see that because I haven't seen it.
Oh, look at it. It's I haven't seen that one forever.
Feels like Warner Brothers is in this trend of making these like game things because now they have that movie called Tag that's coming out with Jeremy Renner,
No,
which is based on a true story apparently, which is
a true
really
story of Tag.
with
Yeah,
Jeremy Renner and
Jeremy Renner and oh god, who else is it? There's quite a few actors in
yeah,
there.
yeah.
But yeah, apparently based on a true story. These guys, like when they turned, I think it was like 30 or something, they started this never-ending game of tag, and they still play. They meet like once a year and they play this game of tag, and it's just ongoing. And I'm like, really?
That's a
okay,
film.
Okay. yeah. I didn't get a chance to see Game Night either. I thought the trailers were okay.
Yeah.
They were decent. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I think the only reason I'd be interested to go see this movie is to see how well they make a movie,
Right.
how well they direct something. Because I did not like the Vacation reboot at all. I thought it was horrible.
Yeah, I was actually, and I'm a big fan of the Vacation.
I
Well, the
love
first
those movies.
the first
Yeah,
three.
yeah.
Vegas Vacation you can completely forget about.
Yeah.
But that it sounds so weird to say, as if it's like Batman, but like that just felt like Ed Helms playing the Ed Helms prototype. It didn't feel
Right.
like Rusty. Like Rusty
Totally.
was kind of a sarcastic kid.
Why don't we just get what's his name to come back? Michael. Anthony Michael Hall.
Anthony Michael Hall, yeah.
I haven't played Rusty.
Yeah, and I will also say that in this one, as opposed to what I've read about The Man Who Knew Too Little, they find out it's a game like halfway through the movie, and then they're just chasing the actual criminals, which doesn't really seem completely justified or believable. And then also you don't have the fun kind of character games of people still thinking they're a game when they're in danger. So
There's a
it's
part of me that
just-
wants to like it because, like, what I love about 80s comedy
Yeah.
films, like your Ghostbusters, your Beetlejuices, and things like that, is there's always the high concept. There's
Yeah.
always that kind of like Police Academy. If you take like the template for 70s comedies, were mostly here's this funny person, and we're gonna put them in a scenario. Your Gene Wilder's like, here's a
Yeah.
normal guy. This happens to this normal guy. Woody Allen films, things like that. The 80s was here's a crazy scenario
Yeah.
happening to comedians. And that's like Police Academy, Beetlejuice, Strange Brew, like these wacky, crazy, outlandish scenarios. And then the 90s kind of became about personalities, like Chris Farley, the SNL
Right.
guys, and all this other stuff. And then the 2000s became about Judd Apatow, which is like very realistic. And comedy should always change and evolve, but I wouldn't mind if we did see the high concept stuff come back. The problem is, I think, to some extent, and I think this was slightly the issue with the female Ghostbusters, for lack of a better term, the Ghostbusters remake, is that it was trying to meld both the high concept idea
Right.
with the Apatow improv stuff, and the 80s high concept stuff was never really that improvised. Those were pretty damn scripted. Bill Murray would come in with some liners, but for the most part, those were pretty tightly scripted scripts back in the high concept. Did you get the feeling that this was like really improvised?
No, not at all. But it's very scripted, which I appreciate, but it's not scripted well enough. And also most of the cast, I will say there's a pairing of like the dumbest friend and then like his Irish date, who's not really his girlfriend, and is definitely the most successful couple because they all split off in adventures.
Right.
But everyone else kind of seems like the generic cast of an ABC sitcom nobody saw. Like they
Like
don't,
something that'd be on right after Modern Family.
yeah, like
Yeah.
they don't have enough personality, they don't have enough comic moments as themselves, and the scenes are trying to make jokes, but they kind of fall flat except for a few physical gags, which I mentioned, or visual gags. So it's like, it's not like a Ghostbusters where everyone is like as charming as like Bill Murray or Sigourney Weaver.
Right. Well, yeah, because I'm trying to think what other comedy. Well, you're going to talk about the other comedy that's out right now in a moment. Yeah, I guess it's kind of interesting. I feel like every year, more and more time goes by, and there's less and less like comedies.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
I guess that's more TV now.
Well, or Netflix.
Yeah.
I think like a lot of great writers are going to Netflix and being like, "Here's my 10-episode series."
Yeah.
This was written by the guy who wrote Accepted. And without looking at IMDb, I would have never guessed that.
Oh, so those two guys didn't write it.
It's not written by John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein.
Oh.
They just directed it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'll probably check it out when it comes to video and give that a watch. So moving on to required viewing for this week, and was my pick, which was The Killing of a Sacred Deer, written and directed by Largos Lanthimos, I believe is the name. He also wrote and directed The Lobster, which Adam accidentally watched, thinking I suggested The Lobster.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's a great movie. And Dogtooth. Dogtooth was his big kind of coming out film that he wrote and directed and was nominated for, I think, won actually Best Foreign Film. For those who haven't seen Dogtooth, I love that movie. That's about a crazy mother and father who keep their children locked up in a house and make them think the real world is a murderous hellscape, and so the only thing they let him do is watch movies, and it's great. I still have not seen his second movie, but Lobster was really good, and then he came out with this, Killing of a Sacred Deer. It's Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman. Colin Farrell plays a surgeon who may or may not have accidentally killed a patient, possibly due to drinking. So in a feeling of guilt, he starts to bond with the patient's son. And about an hour into the film, this is a basic plot. It's also a hard film to spoil. About an hour into the film, the young man says, and in this amazing little scene in the performance, they're eating in this cafeteria. And he just kind of goes, "So I think we should talk about what this is about." And Colin Farrell goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he goes like, "So because you've killed my father, we need to balance out the scales. So you need to choose. Either your wife, your son, or your daughter have to die. And if you don't choose either of them, they'll start bleeding from their eyes. They won't be able to walk. And soon enough, they won't be able to eat food. Okay, now that I've gotten that out of the way, you need to choose." He keeps eating his food. And it just kind of becomes this weird psychological madness. Nicole and I loved it. It was one of my favorite movies of last year. It's not a movie for everyone. In fact, someone I know came up to me and said they absolutely hated it, but they left the theater saying, "I bet Cameron loved that." They were right. I love it. The performances are stylized and weird, and the dialogue is stylized in a way that maybe some people would misinterpret as stilted, but I think it's actually very clinical. And it's beautiful looking. He's very much trying to do a Kubrick, lots of symmetrical shots following people down hallways that are lit in a very white and black contrast kind of way.
Playing a lot with also like different frame rates and stuff.
Yeah, and Colin Farrell at his most beardiest Colin Farrell.
Look good.
It's so weird, and everyone's a despicable monster, and those are my favorite kinds of movies. I adored this film. Adam, what did you think? What did you think of this? What did you think of The Lobster?
I love both. So I only was able to I missed the last like 15-20 minutes of this movie.
Oh no, the resolution.
I know. So I'm dying to go back and watch the end of it. But this movie is sadistic and fucked up, and I loved it. It was so great. But the performances, I'm watching this movie, and everyone feels very monotone and very sort of like robotic, and it feels like it is very on purpose, and I kind of I kind of like that. It's interesting. It builds a very interesting movie, and it makes me even more intrigued by these characters of how like sick and twisted and how many sort of like layers there are to them and how many secrets they have buried, and it creates really interesting, and it gives these characters a lot of depth, and I love that. It's such good performances. The actor, I forget the actor's name who's in it, but he was in Dunkirk. He played Charlie, or
the young boy that passes away.
Yeah. In Dunkirk, and I couldn't remember where I saw him from, but even like the young kids who play Steven's son and daughter, I had never seen them in a movie before. They did a really good job, especially with this like style of acting.
Yes.
Where it requires a certain skill set. They were really, really good, and it's always great to see Nicole Kidman. But yeah, I really do like a lot of the compositions. I love the color, the camera techniques. I like the way they play with different frame rates. Even when the two kids are on the motorcycle going through the city, and she's just like looking up in the city just in awe. And the shot, it just holds on her for like a good 30 seconds. But like I like that we're just sort of letting the scene play out, and the music. I love the music in this. It's a lot of just like
it's very purposeful. Which is
Yeah.
great. There's a scene when the camera just follows in not complete silence. There's like you hear walking and stuff like that. All this sound effect stuff as someone's walking down the hallway. And they fall, and the minute they hit the ground, the music starts doing this like kind of a thing, and with the strings, and it's like I saw this in the theaters with like in a very art house kind of crowd, and when that scene happened, a bunch of people went,
it wakes you up.
Yeah.
I had my headphones on, I had it on all the way, and it definitely like got me going.
Yeah,
they play with sound and music really well in this movie.
And I want to give big credit to Nicole. I love Nicole Kidman. I mean, honestly, I think she's an actress who takes a lot of interesting roles.
Yeah.
And it's done that for a while. I think because our generation, even though she'd done movies beforehand, I think she became huge because of Moulin Rouge, and she certainly had some films that are very iffy under. And I think she then got like a lot of romantic comedies or things like that, where it's like Stepford Wives or Bewitched, which weren't great. And I think she did the Hours, where she won the Academy Award for, and that kind of became, along with Monster, one of those movies where it's like, oh, beautiful actress uglies herself up, give her the Oscar. And I felt like that kind of became like as if like, oh, she didn't really earn that because she just put a fake nose on. And if you've seen The Hours, she totally earned that. But she's always kind of done interesting, weird films. I think of like Birth by Jonathan Glazer, which is a great little weird movie. In the last couple of years, especially The Paperboy, which is like this crazy Zac Efron, Matthew McConaughey movie where she's like attracted to Zac Efron, and he gets bit by jellyfish, so she pees on him, and it gets her and it turns her on, and it's as weird as I just described. But she took that role, and like Stoker and this and The Beguiled, and then she's doing Big Little Lies and all this other stuff.
HBO,
I think she's an actress who like continuously takes on weird, interesting, or different kinds of roles that I think anyone else in her position wouldn't. Like God love Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts at this point just kind of works with George Clooney. And I'm not, and I know there's like offers and stuff like that, and maybe they're not getting them, but I want to give credit to Nicole Kidman for like kind of the last 20 years has just continuously taken on strange and bizarre kinds of roles. Elizabeth, you didn't get to see this.
No.
When you do, I want to hear what you think.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you. It's one of those movies where I'm like, I don't know what you're gonna think.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I can't wait for you to see the last 20 minutes.
Oh, I'm dying.
But it straight out. If you saw this, I definitely want to hear your thoughts. It is not a movie for everybody.
Yeah.
But
it requires. It's same with The Lobster. It's a movie that requires a very particular person. I will say that this movie was. And it could have also been because I was watching Lobster later at night, but this movie to me is more engaging. Lobster seems a lot more sort of like quieter and slower, whereas this, even though it is quiet, because of the music and because of the shot composition and all that sort of stuff, and because of, I feel like there's more dialogue in this movie too, so it sort of helps you kind of get through it more. But it's more engaging. I found this one to be a little more engaging than The Lobster.
And again, like I know, like a former coworker of yours, so I won't name, someone who worked at Screen, no, still there, works at Screen Junkies, put out a tweet when like people were putting out their 10 best movies of the year and 10 worst and stuff like that. He's like, oh, you could never get me to ever watch Killing of a Sacred Deer, and the fact that that's not ending up on a bunch of worst lists is astonishing to me. And that got liked by a bunch of other people that work at Screen Junkies, which is not to call any of those guys out. Like a lot of them have been here and they're great, but that I was like, oh man. And I consider those people pretty filmy people. But yeah, it is.
I really dug this movie.
So
far,
there's as a dialogue exchange, and this is where I was like, and I think it's funny, and to me, I think it's purposely funny. I can see some people going like, this movie's bad, and it doesn't know it, and blah blah blah. But to me, I think it's purposely funny in how clinical some of the dialogue. So Colin Farrell's this surgeon. Him and Nicole Kidman go to this dinner party, and this man walks up and goes, "Oh, how are your children?" And he goes, "Oh, they're wonderful. My daughter just started menstruating." And they go, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
But no one acts like it's weird, and no one's like, "Oh," like it's just that's the world that they live in, and it's established super early. And Alicia Silverstone is in this movie.
That's what I was gonna bring up. Yeah,
and she's crazy weird, but in a great way.
Starts like licking his hand and sucking on his finger, and I'm like, what is happening?
She's like, I lost 15 pounds.
Yeah.
Do you like me as a blonde, or did you like me better as a brunette? I can go back to that if you like. And he's like, they're making him watch Groundhog Day.
Yeah, that's right. I gotta go. I must be going home to my wife now. My family's waiting for me. Great.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
So far, I'm loving it.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be. I guess it's based off. And the title comes from. I guess there's this Greek myth about a man who killed a deer, so God took vengeance on him. And so it's sort of this adaptation of kaiju. I swear to God, if you pull out those wires,
Get out of there, kaiju.
if you those off camera, kaiju's like just digging around in the wires. So I loved it. It was one of my favorite movies of the year. I bought it the minute it came out, and I've already seen it again. And it is so strange and so bizarre, and it's a perfect example. It kind of felt for me like how I watching Jonathan Glazer's films, Under the Skin and stuff like that. It's not as weird as that film. I mean, it's weird in its own different way. But yeah, I adored it. I loved it. I loved it. And if you saw it, if you loved it or didn't love it, let me know. I want to hear about it. I am very curious. And I want to hear what you think of the last 20 minutes. I want to think what you think of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You will find out from me.
Because is it on Prime?
It's not. I had to buy it. Or rent it. I rented it on Prime. But it's definitely going to be a Blu-ray that I'm going to pick up for sure.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking movie too.
Yeah. Is it in 4K? Do they have it in 4K?
I don't think so.
Damn it.
I think it's a indie studio.
Not one of those movies.
Yeah, indie studios will not quite hit the 4K game.
Yeah, they're still working on it. They're still working on it.
They're figuring it out.
Yeah.
So moving on, me and Adam did some talking. So Elizabeth, I want to throw it back over to you. You also saw, speaking of the other comedy that is out right now, you also saw The Death of Stalin from the creator of Veep and In the Loop. What did you think of this film?
I thought Death of Stalin was great.
What's the plot for those? I mean, it's in the title, but
I wonder.
The plot of The Death of Stalin. So it's a farcical type comedy film based on the last few days of Stalin's life, how Russia was at the time, and basically the grab for power after that. And there's a lot of obvious parallels to current politics in America and commentary, and just something that's just so interesting about it is having, I mean, Steve Buscemi is amazing in it. There's so many great performances in it. Just watching these politicians go at each other in different ways and try and take each other down. And it's based on, what happened and who these people were.
Yeah. This kind of grab for
banned
power
in
thing.
Russia. I think one theater showed it, and then they got in like a lot of trouble.
And then no one ever heard from him ever again.
So like all of this happened, which is kind of crazy. So we start off, and this is how dark the film is. It starts off with like the secretary and then two other positions I don't remember, like top of his, I guess the cabinet. They have this meeting, and then the guy walks out and then hands just a list to a guard and says, kill him, kill her first, make sure he sees it, and then kill their son. And then he talks to these people and it's like, shoot these people. And then he just hits them the list and he's like, you figure out the rest of them. And then he just leaves. So like that's the level of comedy. And people are constantly just being shot and cornered and killed and screaming. In the trailer, I think they have this in the trailer. It opens with a famous concert pianist performance on the national Russian radio, and they get a call from Stalin, and they're freaked out, and he has to call them back in 17 minutes. And then there's this whole freak out of like, what time? When is 17 minutes? How long was that call? Does he mean the beginning of the call or the end of the call? Basically, like, we're going to get shot if I mess this up. So they call back, and the guy says, I'd like a recording of this performance. And he says, were we recording? And they're like, I don't know. So he comes out and like runs out at the audience. He's like, everyone sit down. Everyone sit down. We're doing this again. And then like something happens to the conductor. So then they go and knock on a guy's door and to find the next best conductor they can find. The guy's like ready to be shot. And they're like, no, we need you to conduct a performance. It's an emergency. And then like, so that's how it starts. And it's that level of energy throughout the whole thing. There's like, there's so many great physical bits. It really feels like a stage play.
Right.
But yeah, no, I thought it was great. It's a very stylized type of humor. So if you're not into that kind of like farcical type humor, this might not be your thing, but I really loved it.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I love Veep. I really love In the Loop. So I'm very excited to check this out. It's mostly playing at the indie theaters around the area, right?
Yeah, mostly indie theaters.
Yeah. So I mean, but I think it's kind of something that will probably come to video soon.
Yeah.
I think especially with like Veep doing as well as it's doing and things like that. But it's something I
And,
definitely want to see.
Great last performance from George. What's his name? Arrested Development.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because he probably won't be in stuff for a while.
Jeffrey Tambor.
Jeffrey
Oh
Tambor.
yeah, that's what I was gonna. Yeah, because that's the only reason I knew about this movie was because he's originally in the poster and that whole like
they
lineup,
switched it.
and then they removed him and they put in Andrea Riseborough. I don't remember.
And
who
then
replaced him with,
they
but-
also moved. Oh, Michael Palin's in it too, and he's great. They also took Michael Palin out of the poster too, which some of the comments were like, "What'd Michael Palin do?"
What are you not telling us?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, yeah, because I've been rewatching. And actually, real quick, Gary Shandling. I've been watching the Larry Sanders Show on DVD. There's a lot of Jeffrey Tambor in that. Obviously, he's the co-star. But
He's very good.
yeah, on HBO, the Gary Shandling documentary, the first half of it, that Judd Apatow wrote and directed, has come out, and it's very good.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
There is sort of a warts and all degree to it, which I like because it made Gary Shandling both look like a genius, but also somebody who would probably be a real gift and pain in the ass to know and be friends with. But it's a great documentary. It's of course very biased, but because Judd Apatow feels he owes a lot of his career to Gary Shandling, so him directing it, of course, makes it it's very loving in a way. But I think it's still worth a watch, especially if you're a comedy person and a comedy fan. That's on HBO. So, real quick, actually, before we move on to our main review, which is Pacific Rim Uprising, we do have next week's required viewing, and we can also actually say what we're going to talk about next week as well. Adam, the required viewing is your pick. What are you picking?
Yeah, I'm picking Logan Lucky, a movie that came out last year, directed by Steven Soderbergh. It's got Adam Driver. Oh my God, I'm blanking all the Channing Tatum.
Daniel Craig.
Is in it. Daniel Craig is also in it, and Presley's granddaughter. Is in it. Yeah, she's in Mad Max. As well.
Rilo Kiley?
Riley Cuff. Riley Cuff is in it. Yeah,
go.
Hilary Swank is also in it. I missed this movie last year and I really wanted to see it. I really enjoyed the trailers. The basic premise is that Channing Tatum, his character, and Adam Driver, the brother, they're basically going to steal money from this NASCAR race. And it's about this whole crazy adventure of how they go through it. Katie Holmes is also in it. She plays his ex-wife. Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime right now. So if you want to check it out, that's what we're going to talk about next week. I got a chance to watch it over the weekend. I was just scrolling through and I thought, I didn't get a chance to catch it. I didn't get a chance to watch this, and it's a Soderbergh movie, and I like Soderbergh, so let's give it a watch. So I'm excited to see what you guys think about it because you didn't get a chance to see it.
I did not.
I thought you did. I thought you had seen it, so I was curious to
No.
talk to you about it, but you did not.
No,
And,
it came out
you
in
haven't seen
August,
it
and I
either,
think
right?
I had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I love Soderbergh. I was kind of bummed I did not get to go see this one.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about it. So that's my pick. It's on Amazon Prime, and it might. Well, I don't think they usually overlap releases. I think if it's on Amazon Prime, you probably will not find it on Netflix.
Yeah,
But,
no.
so-
Maybe the occasional like classic film will be
Yeah,
on both, but
yeah.
like a new movie, no.
Yeah.
So that's going to be our required viewing. And next week, we're going to be talking about two different films. We're going to be talking about Isle of Dogs, which I'm very much excited about. Elizabeth's got a great idea about that. So we'll see. We'll hold off on that, though, see if we can execute it. But if we can, you'll obviously find out once you watch the episode. And Ready Player One,
All right.
the fabled
Cool.
Ready Player One.
And if we get
Yep.
a chance, maybe we'll talk about Unsane as well, just because we're.
I
talking
would really
about,
love to go see
Soderbergh.
Yeah, I'd really love to go see Unsane.
Yeah.
So, all that said, let us get into Pacific Rim Uprising. Directed by Stephen DeKnight, written by Stephen DeKnight. The sequel to Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim. Rico Kikuchi is back. And now, I probably said that really wrong, huh?
No, I'm laughing at the part that you said that. Keep going. We'll get into it.
Charlie Day is back.
Yep.
Charlie Hunnam is not back, and his
No.
character is mentioned once in one sentence. John Boyega, Scott Eastwood are the new leads, and they're going to teach a rambunctious group of kids how to fight with Jaegers. It's Ender's Game meets Pacific Rim, and not as good as either. It's Pacific Rim Uprising.
Not as good as the movie Ender's Game.
Yeah, probably not.
Look, I know John Boyega wants to be really passionate, wants to produce stuff, but
And you know what? Here's the thing, man. That
Good
guy,
on
he's
him.
He's trying.
Oh, he is.
He's trying real
He is,
hard.
he is.
And he's likable enough.
Oh, he is.
He's
He's
very
super charming.
likable,
He's
yeah.
super charming.
And Stephen DeKnight has done some work that I really
Daredevil
enjoyed.
season 1 was so good.
So straight out, you were gonna say something?
I was just gonna say. So
You didn't get to see this. First of all, Elizabeth did not get to see this, and I think that's fine.
God bless you.
I love Guillermo del Toro, and I barely remember Pacific Rim at
Oh
all.
yeah.
So I really
Fair.
like Pacific Rim, but I think that's fair. But I really like Pacific Rim. I like how it's kind of this weird amalgamation of what Guillermo does very well. On top of telling beautiful fairy tales, he's also very good at taking what are essentially Saturday morning cartoon ideas
Yeah.
and injecting them with some kind of heart and strangeness, which is like Blade 2, Hellboy, Pacific Rim, and stuff like that, while also then doing these like gothic fairy tales that
Yeah.
are gorgeous. Stephen Knight, I will say this. So the kaiju battle stuff, the stuff in the Jaegers is fun. It's shot fairly well. There's a lot of cool little ideas in there. Everything else, all the character stuff, and not to say Pacific Rim had the deepest character work in the world,
Yeah.
but all the character stuff, it's a bad movie, but I didn't leave it feeling like angry, like it's bad, like I did with like Batman versus Superman. I don't care, come at me. And other films where I leave the theater and I'm like, what the fuck? I left this one going like, that was fascinating.
Yeah.
There were choices made in this movie that I found fascinating
Because of how bad they were?
because they made no sense in the sense where it was like we'll get into a little bit of spoilers in a
No
moment.
one's gonna watch
moment.
this.
Well, in a moment, we'll get into some spoilers in a moment. But like the film is so clear. The whole reason there's a sequel in the first place is because the Chinese market
Right.
blew it up like
Yeah,
the first
yeah,
film. So this film is now half Chinese actors, which is not a bad thing, but they were all asked to speak in English. And I think that made a lot of these actors who English is not their first language come across very stilted.
Mm.
And I think it would have been better to just let them speak Chinese
Yeah.
and put subtitles on them.
Yeah.
Speak Mandarin.
Or speak
Yeah.
Mandarin, yes. So that was not great. That was a strange choice. So these great actors
And
then
it had
come
in the
across.
beginning. It was there. In, like,
Yes, that's the
beginning
other
of
thing too. Is like
Yeah.
there were things that were done in the beginning, where they're speaking Mandarin, and then they kind of just go like, "I don't need to do this. I will speak English," and it's just like, no,
Why?
you were doing it. It was fine. So you have that. There's literally a plot line throughout the whole where a whole group of us went to go see this, and I said, "Why did they go here to this place?" And everyone went, I think the thing was there. And I'm like, how did this other person know the thing was there? And everyone went, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we'll never know because that character died. Who's told them to go to that place?
No explanation whatsoever.
No explanation. And also, it could be argued, I think a very smart critic said, you could look at this movie as John Boyega starts off being this very independent, rebellious, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to find success. And by the end of the movie, he's a cog in the machine working for the government and doing what he can for him and the people. And some people said you could look at that as an American turning into the Chinese political mindset, which I found fascinating as a read on the film.
Interesting. Because like I heard first people describe the first one as like an advertisement for war. Which is kind of the opposite.
Yeah,
definitely.
Scott Eastwood, God love him. He looks like his dad. But I will say, after Suicide Squad, the Fast and the Furious film he's in, and now this, my man, you got to find something else to do. Action films are not your forte. And he's trying. God, he's trying so hard, but it is not good. It's rough, very rough at times. And then the 5-6 kids, and we talked about this a little bit in Cloverfield Paradox.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to talk about because you want to applaud a movie for doing diversity. But there is such a thing as, and some people have called it like college catalog casting. And what that is like when you look at a college catalog and no one's the same color and there's like 6 or 7 people and they're all friends. And that's fine, but it feels like a marketing ploy and less we're making characters and people.
Right.
So there's this whole ragtag group of young kids that John Boyega and Scott Eastwood are training. They're all of different races and different origins and different regions, which makes no sense because the Jaeger program had different countries, so I don't understand why all these different people came to America. Maybe America. And I leaned into Zach about an hour into the movie, and I said, name me these characters' names, who they are, and what they're doing without telling me what country they're from or what they physically look like, skin color. And he's like, I can't.
Dear.
He's like, I couldn't tell you anything. Well, two of them die. Couldn't tell you their name, who they were, what they wanted. And same with Cloverfield, where I was like, yes, you made a very diverse film. I couldn't tell, outside of naming the actor who played this part, I couldn't tell you anything.
Idea.
I don't know, the Russian, the German, the Indian guy, the Chinese woman. And I don't like saying those things, but again, like there's no characters
it's a person who it's the bare bones of diversity.
Yeah.
It's not giving anyone a fully fleshed out character.
There's
to
no
play
real
him.
identity.
Yeah.
No, and John Boyega's whole storyline that starts off, and I feel like I've never thought about ever doing a fan edit of a film, but I think I could easily cut 45 minutes out of this movie and make it real streamlined, just get to all the good stuff. Just let's get, and it's not a long movie; it's 2 hours. But
No.
I feel like there's so many.
Still, there's 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It should have been an hour 15-minute movie.
Should have been a short film.
I just drop them in here. I gotta fight the thing, and I
It's
got
like an animated film.
Should have just been the epilogue of Pacific Rim.
So, all that said, here are the spoilers. So here are the spoilers. I now can say I mildly understand why people got mad at Alien 3 for killing everyone's favorite characters from the last film.
Yeah.
That said, I defend Alien 3 for doing that because that is a horror movie trope.
Right.
Hey, a bunch of people survived the monster attack or the killer attack from this film. Hey, there's a sequel. All but the main character died.
Mhm.
Halloween's done it. Nightmare on Elm Street's done it. All those films have done it. You can like it or not like it, but horror films have always done it. I consider the Alien series a horror series more than an action series, despite Aliens being a very heavy action film. Pacific Rim, however, is straight up an adventure action crazy film. So for this second film to take the most popular character, I think by most people's standards, the Riko Kikuchi character, and killing her in a non-heroic helicopter crash.
That's why I made
A
the sound that I
bullshit
made.
death, yeah.
A bullshit death,
Yeah.
like a half hour into the movie, and God love her, she got paid, she came to do it.
Yeah.
And then to turn Charlie Day, the second most popular character,
Into
the main villain
Yeah.
Huh.
of the film
No, Matt walked by and he went,
is such a odd, and that's why I say walking out of here feeling like these are such odd
Yeah.
choices.
It really was a movie we walked out and we were all like, what the fuck did we just watch? That's really what it felt like. Yeah.
That almost seems like they didn't want to pay him as much. That's such a weird choice.
Yeah.
It's such a, and again, like Charlie Hunnam, whatever you think of Charlie Hunnam as an actor, if you know, Alex loves him because of Sons of Anarchy, whatever. And a lot of people felt like his character was the weakest part of the first film. Fine, fair enough. It is so weird though that this film has such reverence for Riko Kikuchi's character and Charlie Day, and they're like, oh my god, and Idris Elba's character
Elba,
and being
yeah.
like, oh, these were the heroes of the first, because this film supposed to be taking place 10 years. Yeah, there's shrines to them. And Charlie Hunnam's character gets mentioned in one sentence. I legitimately thought what the big twist of the film is, and it's not that big of a twist, and it's not necessarily the Charlie Day thing, but what the kaiju are now and how they're doing with the Jaegers. I really legitimately thought, so there's this rogue Jaeger, and people are creating rogue Jaegers, and he kills Riko Kikuchi, and then he starts destroying the Jaegers we're familiar with from the first film, and they rip the helmet off. I honestly thought it was going to be Charlie Hunnam in that.
Oh,
I thought it was going to be like, oh, they're going to surprise us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's going to be him, big, long, blonde beard. He
Yeah.
hasn't been advertised. It's going to be a real surprise. And the only reason I thought that was how much they were not talking about that character throughout the film and talking
almost
about
like it was on purpose.
Yeah, all the other characters so reverently. And I'm like, there's a twist. He's
Yeah.
gonna pop up.
Yeah.
He's gonna be he's gonna pop up at the end battle.
Right.
Like in a helicopter, he's gonna be like, "We got someone coming in," and a helicopter's gonna come and he's gonna like open it, and he'll be like, "We didn't know he was in the movie."
Yeah.
Nope, never mentioned.
No.
Never. He's mentioned in one sentence.
It's like he never existed in this universe almost.
It's so strange.
Yeah.
It is such a strange decision.
Right? Exactly. What happened in New Year? I don't know.
So I don't know. I mean, it did well. But it opened like 30 million here, but in China
Yeah.
it opened at like 90 million.
Yeah.
Like it's a
Huh.
massive hit over there.
Yeah.
So we're probably gonna get a third one. It's also so strange to me. Spoilers for Independence Day 2. It's so strange to me that the last line of this movie is legitimately the exact same line from Independence Day 2.
Is it really?
Independence Day 2 ends with the character playing Will Smith's son. In this film, it's Idris Elba's son walking up to one of the main villains and going, and the main villain being like, you got lucky, but you're not gonna always win. And then this is the line: we're not gonna wait for you to come back. We're coming to your world.
Interesting.
There has been no talk of an Independence Day 3 in 2 years.
Wow.
Interesting.
But that was the last line of this, so we might see now the Pacific Rim people go into what I think is supposed to be a hellscape, because for these kaiju to live, they have to destroy the earth and cover it in volcano smoke.
Yeah.
So I don't understand, why would you go there?
Yeah, this movie was just all over the place. I completely agree with everything you're saying. The characters were just so boring. I didn't care about John Boyega's character, which sucks because Idris Elba's character, I at least cared about him enough in the first movie.
Yes.
That when I heard that John Boyega was playing his son, oh, that's intriguing to me. I like that. I like the fact that we're trying to continue this. This was just so boring. I could
Also,
not
just
care
things
less.
that don't make sense in the sense where it's like, again, you don't mention Charlie Hunnam. The whole thing about Riko Kikuchi's character was she wanted to be a fighter, and Idris Elba was like, I'm not letting you get in one of those things.
Yeah.
You're going to die. You're like a daughter to me. But apparently his actual son was in the army already and trying to fight one of these things.
Yeah.
I don't know. No mention of him.
Maybe he's sexist.
Yeah, and the fact that she was just kind of killed off, and it's just so disappointing because she was definitely like a standout character for me in the first movie, and in this she did literally nothing. They gave her nothing to do. She carried a clipboard around, and that was it.
Yeah,
that was it. And then she was in a helicopter, and then she dies, and I was like, well, this movie just completely tanked for me. Completely. That's the point where that movie just completely lost me. And
it would legitimately.
The action was fun, but it just wasn't enough to keep me invested.
It would be like if go back to the Alien comparison. Aliens opens, and Sigourney Weaver's like, we can't go back to that planet, and they're like, we're gonna, and then they crash, and she dies there before they run into any aliens.
Exactly.
You'd be like,
what the fuck?
What?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the villain ended up being the cat.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Jonesy.
It was disappointing, unfortunately, for us at least.
But let us know if you see it or agree.
There's a
or
lot of
disagree.
people who really liked it. They had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, I know. Scott, who works here, Scott Rubin, he loves that kind of mech, guys in mech stuff. He loves Voltron and all those things. He said a friend of his called him up because Scott was on vacation. A friend of his called him up and said, I like this better than the first one. I think it's better. You're going to love it. And Scott's like, wow, really? I love that. That's one. The first one's one, like, he loves that movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, wow, okay, great. And he said he walked out of there and he texted his friend going like, what are you talking about?
The one thing I will say about this and the first one is I wish that the big big robot battles, I wish we could get that shit in a Power Rangers movie.
Yeah, and someone said
it's done really well.
Credit given. Ashley Robinson. I was working with her, a comic writer. I was working with her on something, and we're talking about the movie. And she said to me, so again, spoilers. The 3 kaiju pushed together and turned into 1 kaiju.
Yeah.
And she was like, so I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, so the same thing's gonna happen with the Jaegers. They're gonna Voltron, and all 5 Jaegers are gonna turn into 1 giant Jaeger. She's like, that didn't happen.
That would have been. I was waiting for that too. I thought that was gonna be some new thing, and it never happened. I went, no, come on.
Yeah. So yeah, let us know if you see this. Do you plan on seeing this or no?
I don't know.
Look, I will say this: having a movie pass, it's a blessing. I ain't mad.
I've got a lot of the signed watching for next Thursday.
It's true.
Yeah.
So yeah. But let us know what you think. And guys, I think that's going to bring us to the end of this Cineverse. So again, next week we're going to be talking about Logan Lucky, Isle of Dogs, Ready Player One, and Unsane.
God, my God.
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be good. It's going to be a good show.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, where can people find you online?
You can follow me, Forward Prefix Kid, on Instagram and Twitter.
Adam.
You just find me at Adam Havoc and, of course, Hyperheroes every week.
You can find me on Twitter.com/Jurassic Alien. You can find me here working on the Power Rangers show, Blood Curdling Tales of Terror, Indomitable. And those are the major things. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter. You see me plugging stuff in the LA area that I'm probably working on with Elizabeth. And yeah, that'll be the major thing. So guys, we'll see you next week. Go see some movies. Let us know what you thought about the films we talked about. If you see them or don't see them either on Twitter or in the comment section below. And make sure to share the show. Let people know that you're watching this and you're loving it. Thank you guys. We'll see you next week.